Without further ado, I'd like to introduce to you Dr. Reza Ziaee. Dr. Ziaee has over 25 years of experience in healthcare operations, restructuring, quality improvement, working with world-class healthcare organizations. So related, we had a previous talk on the topic related in the healthcare space. Now we're talking about very specifically in improvement in operations, etc. He's also published and presented on healthcare operations, redesign, process analysis, improvement, and value engineering. Clearly, he is in the Proqis tribe of people who do this kind of thing. And for 10 years, he's actually been a professor on top of that, speaking at Roseman Health Sciences University and the University of Phoenix and the University of Michigan on the same topic. So clearly, we're going to assume Dr. Ziaee knows what he's talking about. So without further ado, Dr. Ziaee, I'd like to turn the stage over to you to talk about improving patient satisfaction and starting by improving patient experience.
Thank you very much, Chris, and good morning, everybody. I know by now you had a great day and you learned a lot. And what I'm going to share with you, as agenda suggests, is basically trying to discuss a little bit regarding the patient satisfaction and patient experience, define their differences, and also what makes an experience to be good, mediocre, or not so good. And that's the way that we are going to go through. I believe that we do have about 30 minutes for discussion, presentation, and 10 minutes for the question and answer. I'm looking forward to hear a lot of questions because it's a novice approach and also it is a new. Everybody talk about the patient experience these days. Maybe they got tired of patient satisfaction. And I know that patient experience in totality is holistic. So what I'm trying to say in this slide, really present to you what by definition, what is patient satisfaction and what is patient experience. And as you see, patient satisfaction is basically individual service expectation, and patient experience is overall service encounter within the domain of the service. And for example, if you go to a hospital or clinic, what you see, the first things is patient registration. You can evaluate registration for the sake of satisfaction, which means, am I satisfied with the process and the way in which that has been taking care of me, or in that point, yes or no, just one touch points. But imagine that you already include the holistic approach to your experience related to the clinic visits. So you are going from the basically registration to triage go to the exam room physician interaction, and then discharge. Now, if somebody asks you, how was your basically visit? That's a holistic approach, which means you're going to tell them everything regarding that experience that you have and what happened. Of course, I should say this. As you know, when you are taking a flight from one location to the next, imagine from the location that you are in to the quote unquote, imagine Las Vegas. When you are going to really board the airplane, you are not so focused about the things that you are seeing or you do not seeing. The smile on the face of the steward, at that point, it does not really affect you too much. You are concerned of what? You are concerned of takeoff and landing. When you get to Las Vegas and came out of or walk down, or maybe go through the tunnel, walk into the quote unquote ground, you start thinking, what happened? Did my steward was smiling, what I needed they provided me with, or they basically chair was or seat that I was sitting clean and presentable or not? So first things that you are doing at any question, especially in healthcare, you are really having the general trust for the organization that when you go there, you're going to come out alive. And that's very important. The same thing that you are taking a flight. And so this is the things that you can take in after the events. But if you check mark every element at the time that you were during that process, it comes to be patient satisfaction. So I'm going to go to the next. And in here, what I'm trying to share with you is basically two factors for the stabilization of the operations. What I mean by that, which means that if you are trying to really do anything to really satisfy your patient or the customer, is not something that you might give them a glass of, cold water or warm water or blanket, or it might have some effect. But the most important thing is, do I do it in a right and appropriate manner? And am I engaged in that process? Yes or no? And because of it, I do suggest we do need to create an environment for people that they know what it is that we are doing, how we are doing it, and really does the quote unquote my basically patient / customer will be happy for what I'm doing. And then the expertise of how it's very, very important and effective in every point of touch that you are basically encountering the patient or your customer. Of course, in service arena, your evaluation is immediate. The delivery of the service is immediate. The product is not created in the manufacturing basically arena and brought to the store, but it is whatever you are trying to do with that individual or patient or customer, it's something hand in hand. So that's very critical, I should say. The next slide. This is the concept and the tools that I'm trying to share with you. And this was my main structure that I worked with the other basically experience and work through the healthcare. And I will be discussing this in a little bit more detail. Functional tree structure by definition is a pictorial representation that systematically maps out in increasing details all the function and task and activities that need to be accomplished to generate the product or services and achieve the goals and basic, mission of the department or organization. Let's keep this one in mind. And of course, I'm going to go through those areas later on if we have time. Otherwise, we just skip and you can read it. No, I'm going to tell you this through a quote unquote story. When I was in one of the organization, they told me that for 2 years, we have been trying to improve the patient satisfaction for ED patients. But during these 2 years, we didn't see any improvement. And they asked me, do you have any ideas in ED processes or basically work? And have you done any work with ED to really assist and help us? I said, I have redesigned a few EDs. Let's see what it is happening. So the gentleman told me that, or leader, I should say, told me that come to our meeting. We do have a weekly meeting and really stay there and see and listen what is going on and then advise us. I said, that will be fine. So I attended the first meeting, second meeting, and third meeting. At this third meeting, the basically team lead asked me, okay, you have been joining us for the last 3 meetings. What do you think? And I said, you ask and you shall receive. So I suggested and I stated this. I said that you ladies and gentlemen trying to really create a fortress or to build a palace. But unfortunately, what I do see that you are doing is basically landscaping, and landscaping in the area that basically you do need to dig in. Everybody's eyes became so wide and told me, okay, what do you say? What do you suggest? I said, if you allow me for the next month, I will do my due diligence, find out what is really issues that ails your department, and then we go from there. So I utilized my own process of the project management, which is, I call it D to the power of 4, starting from discovery, define, design, and deploy. So I went through and really, as a result of that activities and work through, we really identified or at that time I was alone, I should say, identify the 3 stages in the patient flow within ED. Stage 1, you as a patient come to the doorway of emergency room and waiting to get to the provider. The next stage is basically your test and the treatment starts. And last stage, it basically notion of discharge disposition, that after stabilization of your condition and the physicians allow basically reviewed and accept that you are good enough to go back home, so you will be discharged. Of course, there are some of the patients that we will be staying in within the walls of the hospital, and they will be moved to the inpatient bed and taking care of them in a different basically environment. And then within that structure, this is the functional tree structure or sample of functional tree structure, excuse me, focus on emergency room. As you see on the higher level, we do see door to dock, test and treatment, and disposition discharge. Within that structure, as you do see, it basically you break it down to the next level of functions, such as quick reg or basically registration, triage or quick lock, and so on and so forth. And then the second or third part of it come to the activities and the task and the processes that nurse or MD owning it, and as far as the test go, laboratory, radiology, and dietary get engaged. And when you go through that, the treatment happen and basically managed by nurse and MD evaluation, and then we get to the point of discharge. Of course, it's more detailed, which means that every element that you do see here, especially on the treasury level, you do have processes that you need to develop. Process really is a set of sequence events and activities that create the product that you are really intended to deliver. This is basically the same type of concept through a block diagram. The way in which that the old way patient came to that ED, patient walk in, wait, and then quick reg, which is few questions, then wait, and so on and so forth. Go to the time that patient goes with treatment. In this view, I should say this, people that they came to that emergency room, they were sitting and waiting within the waiting room for 3 to 4 hours to be seen by provider. Patients were basically excited and upset. Every provider, they were upset because they could not see their patients and all the other things that goes with it. The next one is basically, again, same kind of situation that we are looking into, and that is really tell us specifically regarding the value stream map and really explain and give us the ability to calculate the efficiency of the process. And as you see here, the process was effective only 52%. And that 52% really creates an environment that we do need to really look into that. Why is that so? And by understanding this whole thing, there was basically light went on into my mind. And I realized that people are dissatisfied because of all the waits and all the basically issues that they do have. Within developing our processes, we do need to really ask for questions for each of the steps. Is it needed? Does the customer wants to have it? Is there any regulatory agency or credentialing agencies that they require us to do that? And last but not least, is there any risk or safety issues that we do need to be attended to within the basically care delivery? Because if any safety issue or risk occurs during the performing that basically through the process, that for sure will deplete the patient satisfaction or patient what we may call experience. Now, this is the heart of the matter. anything that we do in life, you can challenge me at every point. These are the way that we are doing. First of all, we bring a set of input that I basically focusing on critical input variables. Then we do the processes, which is a sequence set of events and steps and activities that really change the input to a product or services that we are having, and that you get hopefully results the happiest customer. What I'm trying to define in here, basically, I would like to say that your patient satisfaction and patient experience is an outcome. By itself, nobody can go and build a quote-unquote beautiful patient experience if they do not touch what they are doing and how they are doing it. Or, for example, patient satisfaction. Within this two construct, in this construct, you do realize that there is two feedback loops. One is voice of process, which is immediate, and it tell you that if your process works well or broken, and the other one is voice of customer, that basically result of the patient satisfaction and so on and so forth that you do get later, and sometimes you get rewarded and sometimes you get upset with it. Now, basically to create that flow, we do need to work off of the quote-unquote voice of customer. Why? Because everything that we do should be based on the customer specification and requirements. Because if anything that we do create the best product, but the customer does not want it, so they are not going to care about it, or any other elements. And then we are looking at, okay, if that's a requirement, engineers should get together and develop a process, how we are going to develop and create what it is that they are trying to say. And then we are evaluating the input variables. In healthcare, most often the most critical input variable that you could bring in is your provider and also nurses and all the other people that touch the patient, their competence, knowledge, and skills, and basically behavior. It's very, very important. Of course, there's a lot of things that need to be said, and I do not know how many of you gone to a doctor and you ask about what's your basically experience, how many cases you have seen based on this, and so on and so forth. And I would like to share a quick story with you, and that's very quickly. I took my mother at that time was suffering from the esophageal cancer, took him to a lot of doctors in Detroit metropolitan area. And all the doctors within that kind of domain, which is thoracic surgeon, I should say, they were told us that we only thing that we can do for her is just keep her comfortable and let her pass away. Then the oncologist of my mother told me that there is only physicians and surgeons that might do something good, and that is the Dr. Oringer, who's practicing and also the chief of Department of Thoracic Surgery and Cardiac Surgery. He might do something. The first time that I walked into his office, he said, "Reza, I have done 502 cases of this. One died on the table, and the other ones that I opened it up, cancer metastasized to the other organs, and I did the surgery, lived only for 6 months and passed away. Otherwise, every other ones went well." So a proud, a skilled, and a person who has the pride of workmanship, really happy to talk about the experience, about the outcome, and about the statistics. But 90% of the other physicians, I hope that your experience is much more positive than mine, they are hiding and they are telling you, okay, everybody goes well, or everybody, very few maybe do this, but they do not have the actual numerical value to share with you and get you comfortable and get to the next point. The next point that I'm going to share with you, so that's a basic, and I'm not topping at that, but most important thing is this. When we went through, and of course, we started the project and showed the basically shortcoming, of course, two things came across very bright and very what you might say vivid. One is lack of knowledge of operations and way in which that things are going. Of course, I should clarify, people that they are working as a nurse or as a doctor or in a domain, specific domain, they know what they are doing and how they are doing it. But keep in mind, every individual, the way that they are doing is different than the next. So the variation occurs because variation between operators create the glitches and the errors. I'm not going to talk about the number of, for example, mishap that happens in basically in the domain of hospitals, but the most important thing is that we do need to create a uniform, standardized, optimized environment for people, that what they are doing and how they are doing, and create it standardized, which is very, very important. In here, you see that all the weights has been, shortened. Only 2 weight, which is wait for the basically nurse to get to the room after rooming the patient, and also the same thing for the physicians. In this case, of course, this block diagram overall tells you that things has been improved. Now, the next one. Now, if we want to really dig into it and really understand a little bit more related to the condition that we are in, related to that specific elements, we do need to really develop a detailed process map. And as you see, it is a hybrid process map. This is only basically domain, and this is completed process map. This process map is activity-based process map plus hybrid between process mapping, value stream mapping, and also standard work. And those 4 Qs, they are questions that we discussed a little bit earlier. I know that time is getting short and I better start moving fast. If you do your process or basically creation of your functional tree structure appropriately, one of the fruit that you're going to get, it basically appropriate number of FTEs for every area that you have evaluated and worked through. This is an example of environmental services that a long time ago I redesigned it and restructured it, and you see that identified specific group of FTEs for each of the level of the work that you do see here. So, and then what, of course, I should tell you a little bit about my basically outcome of the ED. In here, as you see, results. I would like to share with you the results, because I'm not going to talk about it, what we did, how did we do it, and so on and so forth. It takes, hours. In here, after the results, and this is a basic pictorial presentation of the holistic approach, what did we get? First of all, without increasing any number of nurses or physicians or basically facility number of beds or something, the number of patient per day visits increased by 50 patients every day. That means, and translated to the dollar, which means on the minimum side, between $15 to $20 million annual enhanced revenue for the institution. The next part is basically engagement of the providers and also nurses and other people, because they became very happy for 2 specific reasons. First of all, everybody knew what they are doing and how they are doing it in a domain of alignment and basically standardization, and the events will be following in a very similar way for every patient. And then also, as a result of that, basically waiting for the registration and triage and basically rooming from the 3 hours decreased to only 5 to 10 minutes. Then evaluation of a nurse and evaluation of the physicians, they come to be another 10 minutes. So that created the time that from the beginning to the time that we seen by the physicians and treatment start become to be between 20 and 25 minutes. Then the treatment work, specifically speaking, for three group of emergency room patients that they call it level 5, 4, and 3, come from 5 hours of being in ED and basically blocked at every step of the way, but it became to be around 2 hours to 2 hours and a half. And then the good news was that after 6 months that we saw the results of the press gaining, the patient satisfaction for the emergency patient went up from the 30 to 40% to the 65 to 75 percentile, which means a very drastic change from the base that they did have at the moment. And everybody become very happy. And the pride of the workmanship was obvious and vivid in the quote-unquote face of my colleagues, nurses, and also providers in emergency room. These are the basic specifications that as a result you will get if you develop and deploy functional tree structure in appropriate and systematic manner. One is satisfaction. By creating the what and how, people that they are doing the job, they become very happy at work and at the same time became very engaged because they know what they are doing and how they are doing it. And that nurtures the basically pride of workmanship that nobody hides from what I'm doing and how am I doing it. Treatment and clinical building assistance, it basically creates an environment that all of us taking care of and they enforce the best practices and optimize and align every processes within that construct. When you do this, then you do have capability and ability for innovation because it's science and you can measure and then you can change and test and make sure that everything happen for a good results and you can manage it every step that no error will really dominate and cause trouble. Patient engagement. One thing that we decided through that process that every patient, not only for ED, but for every other area that come to the hospital for any case, based on the admitting diagnosis, they will have a one-page patient itinerary that they know what happened. It depends on the condition, in hour or in basically day by day. And then you can manage and meet the CMS guidelines regarding the length of stay based on the DRG assigned to that specific basically diagnosis. And also as far as the savings and the rewards, as I suggested, you can get very easily between 15 to 20% in cost savings and also in enhanced revenue, as we talked about at emergency room. And I'm looking forward to questions that you may have and we can discuss it. And this is the last slide that I am sharing with you, and that is basically tells you that what the outcome of basically patient FTS will be. This structure will provide a common workplace, stable and innovative approach to everything that they are doing. People will be cooperative rather than to be competitive, and also the workplace become exhilarating. That will be basically suffering and agitating environment. And then, of course, the notion of the culture, which we might hopefully that maybe long term I do have opportunity to really present and share that with you, but that's going to be outcome of this also, which means if you even wants to really change the culture, this will be great tool and great approach to get you to the quote-unquote ideal condition that you are really envisioning, and also transitioning the culture to the point that you can really put your arm around it and at the same time manage and measure. And I better stop because my time seems to be over, I believe. Thank you very much. for
Can Reza, can you move? Oh, good. On my screen, you showed up a little bit frozen. Can you see and hear me? Reza, can you hear me?
Yes, I do.
Okay,
You
good.
hear me?
Yeah, I can now. I think there was a little bit of a switchover as I was turning on my camera to join the group. Well, okay, so I got a couple of questions for you, and we got a few minutes to get through that. As depending on who's listening and what scope or role or what organization they're in, they may want to say, well, how does this apply to my space, right? So can you talk a little bit about the differences, the nuances in applying this approach in a larger organization versus a clinical environment? In my healthcare experience, which isn't anywhere near what yours is, I have worked in very small clinics and then very big hospitals, and I feel like there's a difference there. How would you speak to applying this in a smaller environment like a clinic? Reza, you are frozen on my side. I don't know if you're frozen on your own side.
Yeah, Chris, I think Reza has unfortunately just dropped offline for a second, so we might hold. He may be having connection issues.
Okay, but we're at the end of his talk, but I was hoping we could get through some Q&A. We'll see what happens if he doesn't. Yeah, it looks like his audio is not being picked up on the text writer accessibility screen. Maybe looks like it's just me. All right. well, let's we can give Reza a hand while he's not here to hear the applause, but we can say thank you very much for some of these, depending on the speaker in the speech.
The quote unquote hospital, big and small, we can really, I have been working from the hospital of size of 20 beds and now in the size of basically 500 bed or 1,100 beds. Construct and a concept exactly the same, but you have to size it and slice it in a way in which that's going to be working. And at the same time, one other thing that I would like to suggest, piecemeal approach to the improvement does not work. We have to do it holistically, understand that what is going on, what the purpose is, and then start developing from one side and say go and cover everything. Because as has been said before, every process that ends, the new process starts. Some of the processes will be input into the new process, and some outcome of a process will be delivered to the customer. So we have to really differentiate and also adjust in those domains.
Reza, can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
So that was a very interesting technology challenge we had there. I asked you a question, and then we lost your audio, and you came back with actually the concise answer, which was you've applied this process in very small environments versus very big environments. There was a little gap there on the beginning of the way you answered.
Sorry.
I'm wondering, maybe it's worth, because it is important to include in this recording, the beginning of your answer about the differences between the smaller and the larger implementations.
Not only small and big, but I'm talking about the quote unquote the industries. You can do the same thing in a manufacturing environment, because what the purpose is, you are trying to create a known environment for what and how, which means that when you are doing basically a work, everybody in the specific functional area, they do need to know what I'm doing and how am I doing it. And also, if it's smaller environment or small, you do need to do the same thing. It's the same engine that really works in the quote unquote big Mack truck. It will basically sized in a way in which that really works in a small Toyota also. So within that structure, we do need to size it. And in engineering, if we do way in which that we are functioning in any domain, if we do create a what and how, which means that knowledge that what they are doing and how they are doing it, we will be all good. Another thing that I would like to bring to the table is this, that basically questions that I do have, and everybody has been exposed to it, I believe, especially in healthcare, that we do sometimes doing the Kaizen, and it takes maybe a whole week or 2 weeks or 3 weeks, and they are really happy that really do it quickly. And in Japan, they are doing in 2 hours, 3 hours, or at the most 6 hours. So the difference is that they know what they are doing and how they are doing it, because people are experts for their own work and very knowledgeable about basically the process before them and also process after them. Is exact same thing that we are doing in a healthcare. Healthcare, for example, a clinic and the ED is very similar, but at the same time we have to, because the function of registration is the same thing, because you do get gathered specific set of information for the specific set of basically needs, which is needs exactly the same, because the guidelines coming from CMS. At the same time, when you are going for the triage, the same basic set of information need to be gathered to facilitate the physicians basically conversing with the patient or deploy the treatment that they do need to do. And at the same time, for the physicians, regarding the quote-unquote diagnosis, the activities and approach will be the same. The problem in healthcare, sir, it's a notion of variation. In one sitting that I was, there is a 14 basically orthopedic surgeon, they were functioning. Only one, they did have the lowest length of stay and least basically percentages of readmission rate, and the other people are high. Maybe really for the knee surgery, it was maybe 3 to 5 days, and also rate of return was about 10%. So these are the variation that we have to eliminate it by creating a standardized, optimized, and aligned processes. And that's a basic purpose of the whole things that make what and how known for everybody in the domain of function that they are doing. I hope that I respond to you in some point. And if you are looking for a specific example, I will be more than happy to provide you with.
Well, and I can certainly follow up with you. I think of 2 examples that Florence Nightingale, I believe, I hope I'm getting this right. I believe it was Florence Nightingale who was one of the first people to realize that you shouldn't conduct an autopsy with your bare hands and then go treat live patients. And there was another German doctor who actually did this as well. And both of them met huge resistance in the fatality of the patients. They said the process is wrong, and they tried to introduce this. I really need to make sure I get those dates and names right. They're two very important people. And of course, once that became adopted, the death rate in hospitals went dramatically down. And then you said something about people knowing what the first step is, how your process goes to the next and what the people do. And I couldn't agree with you more about the Japanese. The Japanese have a very process-oriented thinking in some businesses. They do not, by the way, in the government, Japanese government, but they do in the Japanese industry. So I'm with you. Some of this, I think, is a cultural change. It is not just within an organization, but a lot of countries don't think in a process way. Their business culture does not think in a process way. Henry Ford was unique for a reason, right? He was one of the first people to think like that. So anyway, I'm in your tribe. I'm a process improvement optimization kind of person, and I think most of the people who listen to Proqis events fall into your same category. The field you're in, healthcare, incredibly important. I want to thank you for taking the time. I want to let everybody know they can reach out to you because you obviously have a wealth of knowledge. And I wanted to go back to your bio. Okay, this is kind of dumb, but it's true. I once went to a healthcare conference, and I noticed everybody had lots of letters after their names, and I didn't know what any of those letters meant. They were, I mean, I know what MD means and PhD means, right? I know what those mean, but I didn't know what all the others meant. So the next time I went to a healthcare conference, and I was a master black belt at the time, I put every letter I could put with a comma after my name. So I put everything I could think of that represented something I'd ever accomplished in my life, even if it wasn't important. And I would have doctors walk up to me, look at my name tag and say, "Oh, right. And I'm like, you have no idea what those letters mean underneath my name. But you have real letters underneath your name, and I think that's important. Those are serious, significant accomplishments. So again, let me close this session. Reza, thank you very much for your presentation. Thank you for sharing your years of experience, and more importantly, making yourself available to those who have either watched this today or will watch it in the future. So please reach out to Dr. Ziaee after this conference for more information and more detail. That's going to wrap our third to last session for the day on customer experience excellence. We will see you all at the top of the hour. Take care. See you in 15 minutes.
Thank you very much, Chris.
Thank you, Doctor.